All right, so I want to take some time and just kind of show you a couple of things that I use my block for. They can be very useful when it comes to helping with some, knee issues, maybe some inflammation happening in your sitting poses. They're great for helping you with your balance. They're really good to help give you that, keeping you familiar with how positions should be when you're using them, right? And so I'm going to kind of start with the fact that I have a back issue, lower back issue. And sometimes my glute can be very, very inflamed. And this block has come in very good handy for me. I know that there are some people who have really bad knees, or maybe it's really painful for them to be very, even kneeling can be very painful. So I use this block to help alleviate some of that stress. So you're not putting that stress on all those areas of your joint pain. But still, you're still getting the pose and the ability to kind of open up certain areas that we're working on, right? So one of the areas that, one of the poses that I really like doing, especially when my glute doesn't feel very good, is pigeon pose. And it's because it kind of opens up your hip, right? But sometimes it can be very overwhelming, the sensation that I'm receiving in my right glute by being in pigeon pose, right? And especially being so low to the ground. And so sometimes it's like bring your foot in a little closer to help eliminate a little bit of that stress, but maybe that's not going to do it enough, right? Maybe you just need to kind of get up off the ground a little bit. So I take my block sideways and I place it underneath. So it kind of raises, right? Now you're raised, and so you're able to get into that pigeon pose, and you can come down to the ground just like you would if you were in pigeon pose, right? And relax here, right? But you're still opening that hip. You're getting some flexibility out of that hip that you are working in when you're in pigeon pose. Another thing that you could do with it is maybe this part isn't very uncomfortable for you, but maybe coming down is causing a little bit of issues. Maybe you have a lower back issue, maybe you have an upper back, right? You can definitely use this to help keep you up, right? So that way your hands aren't having to come all the way down here. Maybe it helps support you up here. So that is two ways to use your blocks in pigeon pose. You can also use two blocks, one underneath you and one also to support you this way, which I also do. Another pose that I really, really like from sitting is hero's pose, right? So it's basically your legs are widths apart like this. And normally you would just sink in between your legs. But this could be very, very painful in the knees for some of us. And it also could be painful if you're having some lower back issues, right? And so, again, taking my block and placing it underneath me. And it raises you up so you're not feeling that pressure in your knee, but you're still doing the hero's pose, right? You want to be able to raise yourself in your spine. You want to be able, the focus here is the alignment of, but we don't want to do it while you're feeling in pain. So these types of things help you remove some of the stress that's happening on those bones that you don't want to. It makes it feel worse. You don't want to sit in it. You don't want to stay in that position, right? So I try and find ways to incorporate these during our flows because I want you to be comfortable and supported. Another thing that you can do, right, is helping to get you a little bit more space off the floor. So, for example, if we're doing a modified side plank, right? So, side plank usually is, here, right? But modified, you could be here, and maybe you need a little bit less. Maybe it's not as comfortable for you. Maybe it's not good on your shoulders. You just need to be up more, but you still want to get that lineage, right? A feeling of the line going. And so here you are. You've got your block, foot on the ground, arm straight over your head, and you're still getting the same exact feeling and stretch that you would in the other pose, even using your block, right? Another one, another type of thing that I use it for is for balancing. I love this for balancing. So warrior 3 pose can be very difficult, right? I'm in warrior 2, right? I come into warrior 1, but then coming into warrior 3, it's like sometimes you're looking for that balance. So I sometimes will use my block to find that balance that I'm looking for. And it's just a good added support. And come down and reverse, right? See? Another thing that I use it for is chair pose, right? Chair pose, when you do chair pose, right, kind of a couple of feet apart, and sometimes you just, maybe your knees being in together, it's not, it's bone to bone, doesn't feel good, and you want to be able to find a way to help your hips kind of get further apart once in a while. Some of us don't, we can't have our hips that close in. And so separating our feet out a little bit, right, where you're holding your block, okay? And then when you go to sink into your chair pose, you're no longer having to do bone to bone. You have this comfy block that's in between you, and it helps you also to keep your stance a little bit wider than together. So now you're eliminating that feeling of sensation in your hips. So I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I have learned of ways to use my block. I use it consistently throughout my flows. I definitely have my own inflammation that I get through my body. I know I'm not alone. So these are very inexpensive if you find them. You can find them on Amazon. If you don't have blocks, a shoe box or something of the sort, anything that you could find that's like kind of like a box that would be able to support you. Other things that you could try too for those standing poses is like a chair. So if you have a chair, instead of balancing using this, use the height of your chair, right? So, but I definitely wanted to give you guys a little bit of insight of different ways that you could use your block in your practice. Even if your practice is for 5 minutes and you know that you just have something going on in general, just grab your block and use it. It's super, super important, because the last thing you want to do is feel in pain while you're doing your flow, which is supposed to be helping you relieve stress, right? Relieving that release that you're supposed to be having. How can you release if you're in pain? So there you go. My little thing on how to use your block. Okay? I hope you guys have a beautiful day.